Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah here. We are holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Beis, and in Yirtzeh Hashem today we will be learning Daf Samach Gimel Amid Beis. We are continuing to learn Hilchas B'tzias HaPas, the halachas that govern what we do after we've washed Netilas Yadayim. Now we have the bread, or we have challah, let's say, on Shabbos, and we're making the hamotzi. We're about to start the Suda. Exactly what do we do? How do we make the bracha? When do we cut the challah? We've already begun to see many of these halachas. We pick up today in Siman Kuf Samach Zayin, Sif Vav on Samach Gimel Amid Aleph, 2 lines from the bottom near the end of the line. So we're at the point where you have taken the bread or the challah in both of your hands. Remember, we said that we're supposed to hold on to the bread or to the challah with all 10 fingers, because there are 10 mitzvahs involved in the production of bread. We saw various psukim that all have 10 words in them that have to do with lechem. We saw that the berachah of hamotzie lechem in the aretz has 10 words in it. And we spoke about cutting the challah, cutting the bread, having melach, or lifton. We said that nowadays our challah, our bread, all has salt, maybe sugar, other flavorings added to them. Therefore, strictly speaking, we don't really need melach or lifton. We saw that al pi Kabbalah, we're supposed to have melach. Really, it's enough to have the melach on the table. Al pi Kabbalah, you dip the challah or the bread into the melach 3 times. And now we pick up with Sif Vav. Says the Mechaber, Yoichal miyad. Once you make the bracha of hamotzi, you should eat immediately. V'lo yasiach ben bracha la'achila. And certainly you should not be mafsik b'dibur. You should not speak between the recital of the berachas hamotzi and the achila. V'imsach, and if you did speak between making the hamotzi and eating the bread or the challah, tzarich lachsar ulevarech, you have to make a bracha over again. You've ruined your hamotzi. You made the hamotzi and you spoke between the hamotzi and the achila. Now the bracha is gone. Now you have to make another bracha. Tzarich lachsar levarich. However, the Mechaber does give one great caveat. Eli im kein hoisa hasicha b'dvarim me'inyin dvarim shemevarchin alav. The great exception to that rule is if the sicha, if the dibur, if the speech was, in the words of the Mechaber, me'inyin dvarim shemevarchin alav, if it has something to do with the bracha that you made. And we're going to see that what that means is, if the sicha, if the hefsik, the dibur, was b'inyane tzarchei suda, if it had to do with the suda, then you don't have to make a new bracha. And the Mechaber says, kigoin, for example, shebirach ala pas, let's say you made the hamotzi on the pas, the koidim sha'achal, and then before you ate, amar haviyu melech lifton. You said, please bring salt or lifton, which was a requirement of your eating. Or, let's say you said, tenu leploini lechel. You made the hamotzi, baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem in haaretz, and just then another person walked in, so you called out to one of your family members, and you say, oh, go get Ruvain something to eat. Now, that's not a tzarich of your eating of the pas, but it's tzarchei suda. It has to do with the suda, therefore it's not a hefsek. Or, the Mechaber goes weiter, tenu ma'ichala behema. Or you made the hamotzi, and then you remembered that you forgot to feed the chickens. So those are animals that are dependent on you for their food. The halach is you must feed the animals before you eat. So you made a hamotzi, you're about to eat, you remember you didn't feed the chickens, you could go tell somebody, oh, go feed the chickens. The kiyotze be'elu, or any other kind of hefsekim that have to do with tzarchei tzuda, then einoi tzarich levarech, then you don't have to make a bracha again. So we saw over here right now in the Mechaber, we saw primarily 3 halachas. We saw one halacha that once you make the bracha, you should eat immediately. Okay? You should eat immediately. The second halacha really was that when the Mechaber said that you should eat immediately, certainly you should not be mafsik bedibur. Those are really two different things, because the first thing the Mechaber says is that you should eat immediately, meaning even if you're not going to be mafsik bedibur, even if you're not going to speak, you're just going to delay the eating and you're going to sit silently, that's also a problem. So the first halacha is, once you make the bracha, eat immediately and do not delay, even silently. The second halacha is, don't be mafsik bedibur. Don't speak between the hamotzi and the eating. Then the third thing is, when I'm telling you that you shouldn't be mafsik bedibur, there's a great caveat. And that great caveat is that, if you are mafsik bedibur, we said tzarich lachzor levarich. That was really halacha number 3. So again, halacha number 1, do not delay the eating even silently. Halacha number 2, don't be mafsik bedibur. Don't speak between the hamotzi and the achila. Halacha number 3, if you do speak between the bracha and the achila, you have to make a new bracha. And then we had this great caveat, which is, if you are mafsik bedibur l'tzorchei suda, then you don't have to make another bracha. Now let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. So let's pick up on Samach Gimel Amud Aleph with Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Lamed Daled. So the Mechaber said that yoichal miyad, you should eat immediately. Says the Chavetz Chaim, the lechatchila also lahafsik b'shtika. Lechatchila, you're not even allowed to be mafsik b'shtika. You're not even allowed to just delay the eating by sitting silently. Yoiser mikdei dibur. If you wait more than toich kedei dibur, which we know is the time it takes to say Shalom Alecha Rabbi Umayri. Kedelakamon b'simin reish vav sif gimel ayin sham. Then the Mechaber said, "Oiskat lamed hey v'lo yosiach." Certainly, you should not be mafsik b'dibur. You should not speak. Now, when we say that you should not speak between the bracha and the achila, what does that mean? What constitutes the achila? At what point do we consider it that, okay, now you've already eaten and now you could speak? Is it once you put the food in your mouth? Is it when you swallow? Is it when you swallow a certain minimum shear? For example, do you have to swallow a kazayas before you could be mafsik? So let's take a look at this very, very important Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Kat Lamed V'lo yasiach, says the Chavetz Chaim, you should not speak ad sheyechala lil ois ktsas me'aprusa, until you finish chewing up part of the prusa, part of the piece that you ate after you made the bracha, v'yivla enu, and you swallowed it. Okay, so what's the Chavetz Chaim telling me here? Chavetz Chaim is telling me here, you made the bracha of hamotzi, you put some bread or some challah in your mouth. Now do not be mafsik until you chew up and swallow some of it. He didn't say how much. He just said chew up and swallow a little bit. Once you chew up and swallow a little bit, now you could be mafsik. Now, explains the Chavetz Chaim, what is this based on? This that I'm telling you that you must swallow at least some of the bread, what's that based on? Explains the Chavetz Chaim. Came in the pasuk HaShulchan Aruch l'kamon b'simin b'soif simin reish yud. Since we're going to see later at the end of simin reish yud that the Mechaber paskins de b'toyim levad, that if somebody tastes food, im loy bala, if he doesn't swallow. So somebody's making soup and he takes a teaspoon of soup and he puts it in his mouth to see if it needs salt, and then he spits it out. So he never swallowed anything. Does he need to make a bracha? Says the Chavetz Chaim that the Mechaber paskins at the end of Siman Reish Yud, de b'toyim levad, that when somebody just tastes something, im loy bala, if he does not swallow, ain't tzarich bracha. You don't need a bracha. Now, if the Mechaber paskins that when you taste without swallowing, you don't need a bracha, what does that tell you? In Cain, if so, we see ikar habracha ala blia. That shows me that the bracha goes on swallowing the food. Therefore, if you just taste food without swallowing, you don't need a bracha. So then over here by our halacha, at what point did you fulfill the requirements of the bracha so that now you should be able to be mafsik? It's when you swallow, because the bracha be'ikr goes on the swallowing. V'chein, and similarly, says the Chofetz Chaim, im rabim hamesubin. Let's say you have a lot of people sitting around the table. You have 10 people sitting around the table. V'chol echad yesh lo kikar. Each one has his own bilkala. Umevarek la'atzmai, and each person is making his own hamotzi. So now you have a scenario where you have a lot of people getting up and going to wash. They're all coming back to the table, and you have a bunch of people sitting down by the table, each one taking his bilkala and making his own hamotzi. So what's going to happen is you're going to have a lot of people making hamotzis at the same time, and it's very possible that you have somebody who's going to hear somebody else's hamotzi after he himself made a hamotzi, but before he ate. So says the Mishnah Berurah, be careful. V'chein, im rabim hamesubin, if you have a lot of people sitting around the table, v'chol echad yesh lo kikar, each one has his own bilkala, umevarek la'atzmai, and each one is making his own hamotzi, lo yane amen al berachah shel chaveroi, you shouldn't say amen to your fellow, your friend sitting next to you on his bracha, kaidem sheyitam hu al berachasai. Don't answer amen to the bracha of the fellow sitting next to you until you chewed up and swallowed some of your own lechem. Because should you answer amen before you eat some of your own challah, you're going to have a problem, a hefsek, between your bracha and your eating. Okay, so far, what the Mishnah Berurah has told us is, the Mechaber says that you can't be mafsik between the hamotzi and your achila. But the Mechaber didn't tell me what's called an achila. Said the Mishnah Berurah, what's called an achila? What's called achila is you chew up and you swallow a little of the bread. Once you chew up and swallow a little of the bread, you already made an achila. Now already you can speak. Now you can be mafsik. But before you swallow any of the bread that you made the bracha on, you can't be mafsik. That's what the Mishnah Berurah said so far. Now continues the Mishnah Berurah. Having said this, nevertheless, im avar v'sach ba'oidoi loyes, let's say you do speak while you're chewing the challah, koidem shabala haprusa, but before you swallowed. I told you need to swallow. But let's say you didn't do that, and you were mafsik b'dibur, you spoke while you were chewing, before you swallowed, and you spoke b'dvarim she'ena mitzarchi suda. What you spoke was not tzarchi suda, so it was a bona fide hefsek. Says the Mishnah Berurah, tzarich iyun im tzarich lachzor levarich. The Mishnah Berurah is not machriya. The Mishnah Berurah says it's a tzarich iyun. If you have to make a new bracha, if you spoke while chewing, but before swallowing. Now, it happens to be that the Aruch HaShulchan is machriya. The Aruch HaShulchan says that in such a case, you do not need to make a new bracha. And I'll tell you what the logic is, and you can see this really in Sharet Zion, Ois Cotton Lamed. The logic over here is that it's very possible that your chewing is already the beginning of the achila. Why are you chewing? You're chewing in order to swallow the food. So there are those that want to reason that if you made the bracha and you put the lechem in your mouth and you're already chewing it, that's already an achila. It's true you didn't swallow yet, but you're already chewing it up. That's already achila, and therefore, b'di'evet, if you are mafsik, you don't need a new bracha. Continues the Chofetz Chaim, and he says, "Ubechai adam klal memtes," and the Chai adam klal memtes mitzaded. The Chai adam takes the position da afilu loy bala rak hatam shemotzas befiv min halisa. Now this is interesting. When you chew something up, so you put food in your mouth, you start to salivate. Now you're chewing, you're grinding up the food is mixing with the saliva. Sometimes, before you even swallow the bread, you swallow some of that saliva that brings with it the taste of the bread. So the Chai Adam is finding over here a middle ground. Let's say you put the bread already in your mouth, you're already chewing it up, and you already swallowed. But you didn't swallow the bread. But you did swallow some saliva with the taste of the bread. Says the Chayadam, in that case, Ein Tzarech Lachzor Levarech. So what the Mishnah Berurah gave us over here is like this. The Mishnah Berurah said, you make the bracha, don't be mafsik until you chew up and swallow some of the challah. Now, let's say you were over and you were mafsik b'dibur. You spoke before you swallowed while you're chewing. On that case, the Mishnah Berurah said tzarech iyun. The Mishnah Berurah didn't want to be machriya whether or not you need another bracha. The Aruch HaShulchan is machriya. The Aruch HaShulchan says you already started chewing, you don't need a new bracha. The Mishnah Berurah brings down a Chayei Adam that says if you swallowed at least some of the saliva with the taste of the challah, you don't have to make a new bracha. Omnam, however, says the Mishnah Berurah, Ein tzarech sheyochal dafka sher kezayis koydem sheyedaber. You don't think that you must swallow a minimum share of a kezayis in order to be mekayem achila before your mafsik b'dibur. No, that the Mishnah Berurah says there's no such thing. Even if you swallow less than a kezayis after making the bracha, chashiva achila inyan zeh. In the context of this halacha, that's already called an achila. You're allowed to speak after you already swallowed something. Now, in closing, the Mishnah Berurah says, if you're not under any kind of pressing circumstance, the best thing would be taka, that you should swallow at least a share of a kezayis before you speak. Okay. So again, once you make the hamotzi, you should eat right away. You shouldn't even sit quietly and delay. You made the hamotzi, eat. Certainly, you should not be mafsik b'dibur. You should not speak between the hamotzi and the eating. What constitutes eating? So the Mishnah Berurah is telling us, lichatchila, shaloi b'mkar matchak, chew up and swallow a kezayis. Doesn't really have to be a kezayis. Just chew up some of the food and swallow it. You chewed and you didn't swallow. If you swallowed some of the saliva with the taste, the Mishnah Berurah brought down the Chayadam, that's already enough. If you chewed and you didn't swallow anything, the Aruch HaShulchan says that's enough. The Mishnah Berurah doesn't want to be machriya. That's where we're holding so far. Okay. Then we had the Mechaber said, if you did speak, if you were mafsik b'dibur between the bracha and the achila, then the Mechaber said, tzarech lachzor levarech, you need a new bracha. Says the Mishnah Berurah kat lamed vav v'imsach, if you spoke, what constitutes speaking? Says the Mishnah Berurah, afilu tevachas. Turning the page to Samach Gimel Amud Beis, dibur is called even one word. Even one word is already dibur. Then the Mechaber gave us a great caveat, a great exception. The Mechaber said, let's say you spoke, but it was tzarchei suda. In the words of the Mechaber, you spoke b'dvarim me'inyan dvarim shemevarchin alav. You are mafsik b'dibur, but the dibur was me'inyan on the topic of dvarim shemevarchin alav, of what you're making the bracha on. So you're hefsik, you spoke, but you spoke that has something to do with the bracha. Oiskat lam zayin in the Mishnah Berurah me'inyan dvarim, says the Chavetz Chaim, va'afilu hifsik b'dvarim she'einoi l'tzarech prusas hamotzi. Even if you spoke something that has nothing to do with the bread that you're eating, rak me'inyonei tzarchei suda, but it is tzarchei suda, you are mafsik with something that has to do with the suda. Va'afilu diber lahavi akelim. Even if you made hamotzi lechem in aretz, could you bring some utensils to the table? I'm looking around the table. Nobody set the table. Bring the forks and the spoons and the knives. Or, hamotzi lechem in aretz. Nobody has any cups. Bring glasses. That's nothing to do with your eating. It's nothing to do with the hamotzi and the prusas habetzia, but it is tzarchei suda. Says the Mishnah Berurah, afilu diber lavi akelim shein l'tzarech hasuda loy hevi hefsek. That does not constitute a hefsek. Oiskat lamed ches. For example, the Mechaber said, you made the hamotzi on the pas, and then his first example was, you said, haviu melach lifton. So you made a hamotzi, and then you said, bring the salt. Now, is the Mechaber saying that because we learned that there's a requirement to have melach or lifton on the prusas habetzia? Is that why the Mechaber is saying that? Says the Mishnah Berurah, no. Va'afilu pas shalanu, even our bread, the nikia, we eat wheat bread, it's pas nikia, umetubal betavlin, and it has flavorings, it has salt, etc. So for our challah, we don't wait for melech lifton. Melech lifton is not a requirement for our challah. Nevertheless, if you happen to want salt or lifton, so you made a hamotzi and you want to dip your challah in onion dip. So you said hamotzi lechem and aretz. Excuse me, can you please bring the onion dip? There's no halachic requirement to have onion dip, right? But you want to have onion dip. So that's tzarchei suda. So, harezem inyani suda. That's called a hefsek. That's inyane suda. And therefore it doesn't constitute a hefsek. B'di'evet, it doesn't constitute a hefsek. We're going to see that certainly l'chatchila you shouldn't do this. But b'di'evet, if you did, it's not a hefsek, and we're not going to require you to make a new bracha. Another example that the Mechaber gave, Ois Kat Lametes, Tenu Leplaini Lechel. You said, Amaitze Lechem and Aretz, then a guest walked in, and you said, oh, Reuven, go give Shimon some food. Bein Ani, doesn't matter if the person who walked in is an Ani, and therefore you have a chiyuv to give him. Ubein Ashir, or he's a well-to-do person, so you don't have a chiyuv to feed him. And it doesn't have to be that you instructed somebody to give him a piece of the challah that you made the bracha on. Somebody came in and you told somebody sitting around the table, you told one of your children, oh, go get Reuven a bilkala so he could wash and make hamotzi. That's all called inyane suda. Another example the Mechaber gave was give ma'achal behema, go feed the chickens. Gam came in Inyani Sudahu, that's also called Inyani Suda. Why? Because you're not allowed to eat before the animals that depend on you eat. So it holds up your Suda. So that's Inyani Suda. Very interesting. The lishtois, we know that you're not allowed to eat before your animals eat. So if you know that nobody put out the food for the chickens, you're not allowed to eat before you put out the food for the chickens. But how about if you want to take a drink and you know that nobody put out the water for the chickens? Says the Mishnah Berurah that the Magen Avraham writes in the name of the Sefer HaChasidim, the lishtois, that when it comes to drinking, Adam kaidem lebehema. You could drink before your animals drink. And where does this come from? Very, very fascinating. Comes from last week's Parsha. Kidiksiv berifka. What do we find by Rivka Imenu? When Lavan came and tested out Rivka, what does it say over there? Sha'amra la ha'eved. She told Eliezer Eved Avram, Shisei, go drink the gam gimalecha ashke, and I will give your camels to drink. Well, that means that Eliezer Eved Avram drank before his camels drank. So you see that you're allowed to drink before your animals drink. You're not allowed to eat before your animals eat, but you're allowed to drink before your animals drink. Very interesting. That would be a great trivia question. What halacha do we learn out from that story? Okay, very good. Now let's go to a fascinating Ramah. Says the Ramah, second line down near the end of the line. Haggah. Umikol makayim. Nevertheless, even though the Mechaber just gave us this caveat, and the Mechaber said that you should not speak between the hamotzi and the eating, and if you speak, you have to make a new bracha, and then the Mechaber said, but if you speak mitzarchei suda, then you have an out. If you speak mitzarchei suda, you don't have to make a new bracha. Says the Ramah, nevertheless, lechatchila lo yafsek klal. Lechatchila, you should not be mafsek at all, even litzarchei suda. That's not the part of the Ramah that I said is fascinating. It's the next piece. Let's see Mishnah Berurah Mem Aleph first. Lo yafsik klal. Lechatchila, you shouldn't be mafsik at all between the bracha and the eating. Says the Mishnah Berurah, b'chol elu advarim. All of these kinds of examples that the Mechaber gave, lechatchila, we shouldn't be mafsik at all between the bracha and the achila. Va'afilu im hayapasha einay naki ditzarech lahamelach. Even if you're making a bracha on challah that's not pasnaki, it's spelt bread, it's not wheat. So it's not pasnaki, and it doesn't have salt in it. It has no flavoring. So now we have the halacha that we learned earlier, that you're supposed to wait to make the hamotzi until you have melach or lifton, and you didn't. You made the hamotzi without melach or lifton. So now you want to ask somebody to get the salt. Says the Mishnah Berurah, even in that case, the Ramah says, you should not be mafsik before you swallow at least a little bit of the prusas habetzia. Now we come to a very interesting piece of Ramah. Now, to understand this Ramah properly, I want you to envision that you're sitting around your Shabbos table and you have your family and maybe some guests, and everybody washed and everybody came to the table, and you're going to make the hamotzi now, and you're going to be motzi everybody with your hamotzi. They're not making a berachah hamotzi. You're making a berachah hamotzi, and you're being motzi them in the bracha. And then they are going to eat, you're going to eat, and they're going to eat. Okay? Says the Ramah like this. V'ha di'im sach dvarim b'telim, tzarech lachzor levarech. This halacha that the Mechaber just said, that if you talk dvarim b'telim, what does it mean dvarim b'telim? Things that are not tzarchei suda. This halacha that the Mechaber said, that if you speak things that are not tzarchei suda, between the hamotzi and the achila, tzarech lachzor levarech, you have to go make a new bracha. Says the Ramah, Hainu dafka shesach, and I'm going to read this the way the Mishnah Berurah says it should read, not the way it is in our text. Hainu dafka shesach haboitzeya, that the one who's cutting the challah spoke kadam sha'achal, before he ate. Aval achar kach, but if the one cutting the challah made the bracha and ate, so achar kach means after the boitzeya ate, aval achar kach, after the boitzeya, the one who made the hamotzi and was motzi all the rest of the people around the table, if he made the bracha and he already ate, loy hevesicha hefsik, then if any of the other people sitting around the table talk before they eat, it's not a hefsek. So again, if you notice, I'm reading a lot into the words of the Ramah. I'm learning the Ramah the way the Mishnah Berurah explains the Ramah. What the Ramah is saying is like this. Let's go mikala lakaved. Let's go from simple to more complex. When you make a hamotzi, you're not allowed to be mafsik between your hamotzi and your achila. Now let's take that halacha and let's apply it to our Shabbos table, where the balabas, the head of the household, is going to make the hamotzi, and he's going to be motzi everybody around the table in his bracha. Says the Ramah like this. If the balabayas makes a hamotzi, okay, and he does everything kedasu kedin, he does everything perfectly fine. He makes a hamotzi, he's not mafsik, he immediately eats a piece of challah. So what he did was perfect. And now somebody sitting around the table, he said amen to the balabayas' bracha, and then he didn't eat. And instead of eating, he started a conversation with the person sitting next to him. Is that a problem? Do the math. He was yoitze with the bracha of the balabayas. So the balabayas made a bracha. and he was yoitze with the bracha of the balabayas. But after he was yoitze with the bracha of the balabayas, he didn't eat. Instead, he started talking. So you might think that that's a problem. He was mafsik between the bracha and the achila. Says the Ramah, no. That's not a problem. That's not a hefsek. You know why? Because in that case, you were yoitze with the bracha of the balabayas. And the balabayas made a bracha and immediately ate. So his bracha was mekuyim, so to speak. His bracha was chal. He made a bracha and he did exactly what he was supposed to do. He made a bracha and he immediately ate. You didn't have to eat. You got a berachah hamotzi by dint of the balabayas getting a berachah hamotzi. And the balabayas got a berachah hamotzi because he did everything he had to do. So therefore, it's not a problem. Let's read it again. In the words over here. Something fascinating is going on my screen. In the back, I don't know if you're going to see that in the video. I just had like all sorts of fireworks going on my screen. I think it has something to do with voice recognition. I'm working on an Apple over here. I have a funny feeling that it thinks I said the magic word Siri. And then it made some explosions. I don't know. But in any case, again, the Ramah, we read the Ramah like this. This halacha, that if you're mafsik between the bracha and the achila with dvarim betelim, that are not tzarchei suda, you have to make a new bracha. Hainu dafka shesach haboitzeya kodim sha'achal. That's only if the balabayas, who's making the hamotzi and cutting the challah, if he was mafsik between his bracha and his achila. If he did that, then he ruined his bracha. Aval achar kach, but if he did what he was supposed to do, if he went ahead and he made a bracha and immediately he ate, lo yav asicha hefsek. Now, talking is not going to constitute a hefsek. Even though the people who listened to the balabayas' bracha and were yoitza with his bracha, even though they did not eat and they started talking, still it's okay because kvar yotzu kulam ba'achilas habaytzeya, because they are all yoitza the bracha with the eating of the balabayas. Continues the Mechaber in the top of Samach Talmud and Aleph, ki ein tzrichim kulam lechol min prusas habaytzeya, because those people sitting around the table and being yoitza with the berachas hamotzi by the balabayas, they don't have to eat any of the challah. Rak she'osid came l'chibuv mitzvah. The only reason they eat from the challah of the hamotzi is to show the belovedness of the mitzvah. But strictly speaking, they don't need it to gain the hamotzi. And I'll tell you where you could see this. You could see this by Kiddush. Let's say the father sits down by the table and he makes Kiddush Friday night, or stands, and he makes Kiddush Friday night. And then he passes around wine. Everybody's not mechuyev to drink the wine. They're all Yotze Kiddush. They don't have to drink the wine. So too over here. The rationale of the Ramah, now we'll see that many disagree with the Ramah, but the rationale of the Ramah is that the same thing over here. The balabayas made a hamotzi, and he ate. He must eat. And he is not allowed to be mafsik between his hamotzi and his eating. But he made hamotzi, he wasn't mafsik, and he ate. So the hamotzi was accomplished. And you all listened to his hamotzi, and you said amen to his hamotzi, you all got a hamotzi. Even though you were then mafsik before you ate. It doesn't matter. You already got a hamotzi. And therefore, your talking before you eat does not constitute a hefsek. Let's take a look at this in the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut in membeis. The words of the Ramah were, Hainu dafka shesach koidim she'achal habaytzeya. That's not the way I read it. I read it the way the Mishnah Berurah is going to say over here. Shesach habaytzeya koidim she'achal. If the balabayas spoke before he ate, then you have a problem. He ruined the beitzea, the balabayas ruined his bracha. He was mafsik between his bracha and his eating. Kain sarch loymar, that's the way it should read. Mem gimel, aval achakach, pirush. What's the pirush of what the Ramah is saying? Afilu hisichu achakach hashoymim v'yoytzim biberachasai. Even if the people that are listening and being yoytze with the balabayas' bracha were mafsik, they spoke, koidim shetamu, before they ate any challah, gam kein ain't peda b'di'evid. B'di'evid there's no peda. They were all yoytze with the bracha. Haylu kvar chala berachas hamavarech. Because the bracha of the mevarech, the bracha of the balabayas, was chal. It was a perfect bracha. However, you certainly should not do this lechatchila. Lechatchila, everyone should make sure to eat some bread, some challah, after being yoytze with the bracha of the balabayas. V'hinei zeu rak das haRamah. The Machaber says you should know this is only the opinion of the Ramah. Aval kimat kol ha'achreinim cholkim alav. He says kimat all the achreinim argue on the Ramah. Usvira lahu, and they hold deloy adif hashemeya mehamavarich atzmai, that the shemeya, the people listening to the bracha of the mevarich, are no better than the mevarich himself. Kishesach kaidim ti'imasei shechayzeru mevarich. Certainly the mevarich, if he's mafsik b'dibur between his hamotzi and his achila, he needs a new bracha. So the shoymim, the ones that are listening to the mevarich's bracha and being yoytze with the bracha, they too, they're gaining his bracha. But if they're mafsik between the bracha and their achila, these achrayim reason that should be a problem. In other words, the mevarich, right? He makes hamotzi, he must eat right away. Okay, you, the people sitting around the table, where are you getting your hamotzi from? You didn't make a hamotzi. You're getting a hamotzi from the mevarich. So fine, you got a hamotzi from the mevarich. The same way the mevarich has to eat immediately after the bracha, you also have to eat immediately after the bracha. They don't like the Ramah. V'achinami hashoymim im efsiku b'dvarim kaidim ti'imasa jechayzu nemevarchin. V'da oid, and furthermore you should know, says the Ramah, de'im ha'mevarech sach kaidim shetam. Let's imagine this case. Let's say the balabayas makes a hamotzi, and the people sitting around the table have kavanah to be yoytze with the bracha, and they say amen, and they do the right thing. They immediately pick up challah and eat it. But the mevarech starts talking before he eats. Says the Mishnah Berurah, in that case, even though the people listening and being yoytze, they didn't talk at all, they don't get the bracha of the mevarech. They're dependent on the mevarech, and the mevarech messed up his bracha. Very fascinating Ramah over here. Very, very negeya, this Ramah. When you sit around the Shabbos table and you listen to the balabayas make a hamotzi and you say amen, certainly lechatchila, make sure that you eat right away. If you didn't eat right away, so according to the Ramah, b'di'evid, it's okay. This also has other connotations in halacha. All right, we'll get to that Mir Hashem tomorrow. All right, we're going to stop over here. We'll continue next time with Siv Zion. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. Discussing limud HaTorah should be Megan against Klal Yisrael. The Rabban Shem should send Yeshua Sefurus Parnasset Sheduchim to all those in need. Achenu Beis Yisrael Hanusunim Batzara Bashivya Haimdim Bein Bayam Ubein Bayabasha Hamakim Yirachem Aleihem V'Yitzia Mitzara L'Rvacha Me'afela La'Oira Mishibed L'Geula Hashta Bagala Uzman Kariv V'Neimar Amen. Be well.